everyone, this is the channel AgileSeeker. My name is Arman, and today our guest is Lee Lambert, the founder and the owner of the Lambert Consulting Group, and also the founder of the famous and worldwide recognizable exam Project Management Professional, PMP certification. Good morning, Lee. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I look forward to these kinds of opportunities.
Okay, thanks. So, I do understand there is like a hefty amount of stories and a big amount of experience that you can share with us. But then maybe we can start like the very beginning. I mean, how did you get the project management? How was like the first experience with this, with all this industry that you was like maybe the founder of?
Well, I started out, I'm a mechanical engineer by training. And I started doing that engineering work and discovered that I didn't care for it too much. In fact, I wasn't really very good at it. And so I started thinking about what really got me excited, what I really enjoyed. And it was the people aspects of my work. And then out of that grew this understanding of something called project management. Now, this is the 1960s. I mean, before you were born, probably. And so I started to do some little around the house kinds of projects, and I started to realize, hey, there's really a methodology here that can be very useful in the work environment as well. So I was working for General Electric at the time, and they had a contract come up that required them to use something called earned value, the earned value management system. And they needed someone to train 300 engineers that were working on a nuclear reactor project. And so I volunteered to do that. I had no idea what earned value was, but I volunteered to do that because I thought that would be one way. It's kind of like throwing your kid in the swimming pool and hoping they swim. So I thought, this would be a good opportunity to see, am I really going to be a project manager or not? So I trained about 300 engineers, probably over the period of about 9 months. We trained them, and they ultimately passed an exam. Wasn't a PMP exam; it was a government exam that validated you know how to use earned value. And from that, I really realized this was my calling. This is what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life. And so I left General Electric in about '77 and went to work for a large contract research organization that was running a national laboratory out of Richland, Washington. So I went up there under the assignment of implementing, and enabling project management in a national laboratory. It had never been done before. No national laboratory in the United States used project management as their way to get things done. So they hired me away from GE. I got to do that, and I was successful. We got an implemented system that was validated by the U.S. government in about 4 years. So in about 1981, I transferred to where I am now in Columbus, Ohio, on a 3-year temporary assignment. That was 45 years ago. I'm still waiting to go back, I guess. But so it turned out to be the opportunity of a lifetime, because in 1981, when I moved here, I was immediately requested to volunteer to be one of the founders of the PMP system. We didn't know it was called PMP at the time, but I had to get my CEO's approval because it was going to require some funding and some time away from the office. But I felt that this was a great opportunity because it was the first thing I'd seen that was going to formalize a way to validate someone's level of knowledge in project management. So we spent about 3 years in the development of that program. So in 1984 in Philadelphia, we rolled out the PMP, and that was the beginning of what has become now the world recognized method for validating your knowledge in project management. We currently have about 1.3 million people that have achieved that certification. So, and I'm getting 10 to 12 a day. So I still try to write a congratulatory note to everybody that passes the exam, and I'm averaging 10 to 12 a day. So it's still awfully popular. It's still recognized, even with the onset of Agile, the differential from between Agile and the and the predictive model has had some impact. But we see that PMP has set the standard and has maintained that reputation for all of these years.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, yeah, I'm one of the proud holders actually, and I was like seeking for it. I got it mine in 2017, and it's like still, and it's really worth it because like 90% of my students and people I speak of about project management, they still pursue this certification and they still understand the value of it. So it's kind of really words of pursuing. So going back to the story that you have that you told us, like the process of creating of the PMPs was like formalizing the whole knowledge and like the idea of the PMP exam. How was it formulated? I mean, you like founding the exam, like accumulating all this knowledge, create all the areas and all of the like everything that is like holding it, like cover everything. It do require like 3 years, as you mentioned. How was the idea originated? I mean, there was a plenty of knowledge, and just one day, like decided to let's create an exam that will formally evaluate the knowledge. How was this? I do believe it was a bit iterative process. So it's not from the first part.
Yeah, the history is a little bit odd, and most people don't know it. I share it. I don't know that PMI likes me to share it. But the fact of the matter was, the reason we formulated this idea of a certification is that in 1981, 80, 81 timeframe, the PMI membership had started to fall off. We started to see a decline in membership, and that kind of made us nervous because we had been doing quite well. And so we started talking about what does it take to sustain that membership and grow it. And we started interviewing other organizations like CPAs and professional engineers and that sort of thing. And every one of them said, well, what you have to have is some kind of a certification, some ownership that will draw people to your organization. And so that was the premise of the whole thing, was to try to turn membership around, give them something that they can have if they become a member and pass an exam. So the requirement was, in order to sit for the exam, you had to be a PMI member. And so that was the hook that we were using. And we used that for, oh gosh, probably over 10 years. And by the end of 10 years, we only had 6,000 PMPs. 10 years, 6,000. So from that standpoint, it wasn't what you'd call an instant success. That's for darn sure. And the easy part was the exam, because at that time, we didn't have a well, sorry to admit, we didn't have a PMBOK. There was no, the first formal PMBOK was in 1996, and this is 1980 timeframe. So we created these body of knowledge areas. We had a lot of white papers and a lot of studies that we'd done. And so we drew from that and came up with these 8 body of knowledge areas that eventually became the PMBOK, and was able to do the test preparation around each body of knowledge. So rather than a general waterfront kind of an approach, we had 8 body of knowledges that we could do the testing for, and they were all done with volunteer questions from people just like you and me. And we ended up with 40 questions in 8 body of knowledge areas. That's 320 questions, and you had a morning to do half and the afternoon to do the other half. So it's an all-day exam back in those days. And you didn't find out if you passed for about 6 weeks. So we had to take those tests, evaluate them, score them, give the information back to the test taker. So you could be on pins and needles for 6 weeks, whether you passed or not. And then it was based on knowledge area by knowledge area. So if you passed 6 out of the 8, you didn't have to take the whole thing over. You could just take the 2 you didn't pass. If you didn't pass 3 or more, you had to take the whole darn thing over again. So we had to struggle with that a little bit. And to tell you the truth, I was the committee for qualification for sitting for the exam. We had a very easy exam application. You had to have 95 points in 3 areas. And if you had the 95 points, then you paid your money and you got to take the exam. So that part of it was fairly easy. And it stayed that way until 1996, when we had a fellow who now, believe it or not, owns his own university in D.C., uh, David, can't remember his last name. And he said, this is crazy. We're keeping people from taking this exam by requiring them to be a PMI member. Let's drop that membership thing and see if that increases the interest. Well, did it ever? I mean, not only did we get to say, look, you don't have to be a PMI member. You can take this exam. You can pay your money and take the exam. And at the same time, we got the endorsement from IBM, AT&T, Motorola, Sprint, you name major corporations in America. They all adopted the PMP as their internal certifying methodology. So all of a sudden, we're getting hundreds of applications per day, and the number just from that point just went crazy. And so even now, we in China recently. I don't think this is proprietary. In China recently, we tested 2,000 people at the same time in one facility. 2,000 people took the exam in China, and Japan's doing that as well. Not as big, but China just. I mean, they won't let us have chapters there. That's against the Chinese law, but they will let them take the exam. So we've got people over there that are coordinating the exam, but 2,000 in one day, that's kind of what's happened, because people see it as a pre-screening way in the hiring. Employee development programs are adopting the same kind of thinking internally, but in the meantime, the HR department oftentimes put that as a pre-qualifier. So a lot of the ads you see now in the paper will say PMPs only need apply. So now I've just eliminated my opportunity to get in the market if I don't have my PMP. And so we've seen that kind of endorsement. And IBM, of course, created their own internal process once they once they borrowed things from us. But generally speaking, when I look through the papers, and I look through the international papers as well, London, the English speaking papers, and most of them now include PMP only or PMP desired. So we see that interest in it, and it's grown from, really very minimal interest in the first 10 years to what it is now, 1.3 million. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's actually it is really required here as well. I do see a lot of HR and they're also like working advertisement about the work recruitment, and they still writing like a desired or required, because this is like become a gold standard. Yeah, about if you know this, if you pass this, then you know what to do. And still, this is also accelerating the boost for applying for the PMP. How did your life change about this boost about after this PMP creation? So you went like the project manager, like starting from mechanical engineering, then go to the project manager, then you got the idea like and found it like write down the PMP, and then how things like evolution it for yourself prior, like personally for you, how you feel the change after creating a value such a valuable asset.
Yeah, I think that's a real good question. Because it had a dramatic impact on my career. What I found was in preparing and working on the PMP development, I became extremely knowledgeable about the process of project management. And as a result of that, did a lot of consulting in terms of not necessarily paid consulting even. I'm a volunteer addict. I really volunteer to do whatever I can to further the idea of project management. So I got to do that in a way that it enabled me to work with private industry to help them implement project management in their organization. So suddenly now I'm not working with one organization, I'm working with multiple. And I became, I hate to use the term, but I became famous as a result of being a founder. Now, remember, there were five five of us in the original founding group. Now, two of those are dead and two are retired. So I'm the last man standing that's still active and has been there since the beginning. And so it puts a lot of demand on my time and my almost addictive use of LinkedIn causes that to further itself. It's self-sustaining now as people want to get answers to questions that you don't always face in your real world. So for me, it's created a very special niche where I have that reputation, whether it's deserved or not. Nobody's confirmed that, I don't suppose, but I really am in a position now where I get an opportunity to get involved in very innovative, creative thinking about how can we take project management and really put it to work in our organization. I'm such a strong believer that project management is really the answer from a process formulation standpoint that allows organizations to be much more effective, to be much more strategic in their thinking, realizing you can't just randomly start picking projects. You have to decide on how do you want to spend your resources. You've only got so many resources, and because of the matrix, we have to borrow those resources from the line managers that own them. And if we've got too many projects, none of them will get done well. So project management has put the focus on now this move away from project management into agile thinking is a little bit disappointing to me because I look at agile and I think conceptually it's makes a lot of sense, but it really causes a focus early on to short-term thinking. We've really done away with long-term planning. Long-term is 2 months in an agile environment. So you get these sprints and you get these things where we're doing small bits at a time. Now, I will say to you, that's a good way to do business because it reduces the errors. With the common predictive way, we plan the project from start to finish, knowing that in the last 6 to 8 months, everything's going to change because we get new information as we go through the process. Well, Agile's saying, well, let's not do that. Let's not plan out in detail. Let's plan out in short term, 2 months, 2 weeks, whatever the sprint levels are. And when that sprint level's done, we will have learned. We call it retrospective. We will have learned something we can apply to the next phase. So the theory is that you're going to get a better product faster with Agile because you've taken the time to not waste a lot of time replanning the out time frame. So I think Agile is still project management. And a lot of people say it's not project management, it's the mindset. Okay, whatever. It's still something that you can use to get your job done in a more effective way. That's the one downside of predictive is that we try to be too uh, comprehensive in our planning, and we're planning things when we don't really have any idea what that out time frame is going to look like until we get there.
See. Yeah, first of all, agree. I mean, I fully agree with you. Like the agile is like it's still project management because it's do connects with all the aspects of the proper processes and proper project management. And by saying mindset, yeah, okay, it still has a hefty element of mindset, but still you are working with people, you are working with processes, and you do a certain amount of planning. Under the circumstances of a certain project. So it's still a project management, I fully agree. Talking about Agile, I noticed that there is a hefty amount of Agile recently added to the PMP exam. And I do remember, if I'm just correct me if I'm wrong, that last year, I guess the president of the PMI announced it that they're gonna increase the amount of Agile project management in the overall PMBOK knowledge. So like accordingly, it will be involved also in the PMP. So one of the ideas in the community is that it is because of the changing environment, changing of all this products part, projects things, and the things are changing very, very fast. and companies, some companies deciding to shift from traditional long-term planning, like 5 years or 10 years planning, with a more agile way. And this is like a response for the modern tendencies. So what's your opinion on that, and how you see the integration of these two, like the most, let's call it the most valuable project management methodologies right now? Because if we like look at the projects of the last years, you see it's either agile, it's either waterfall. So there are like two most valuable part for me. How do you see this symbiotic work in the future with these two methodologies?
Well, I think that first of all, the PMI inclusion of Agile stuff in the exam and in the PMBOK, I think that has to happen. I mean, if you're in the project management world and you know that it's changing around you and you ignore it, then eventually you'll be out of date. You'll be out of step with the rest of the environment. So I think from a professional standpoint, it was the right thing to do. A lot of people complained about it because they're predictive oriented, and so they don't. Why are we putting Agile in there? We don't use Agile, and so, but they do, and so what we see is that because of the success, or they claim success in the software development business, where Agile has its most application, that's seen as, hey, maybe we could apply that everywhere. And so it has to be in the PMBOK. But one of the things you'll notice, at least I think you'll notice, is that the way it's put into the PMBOK, the way it's involved in terms of how it gets in the project management arena, it still gives the user the choice. Still gives someone the choice to say, what is Agile going to be? Is Agile going to be the most effective way to do this project, or is this project a predictive model, a waterfall kind of a model? Well, my position is this. I think, and there's still people that try to apply Agile when it doesn't really have applicability, like construction or production or a road project, or those are not. They don't lend themselves to Agile. And so we have to be smart in how we use it. So it's included in there. It is in the exam. If it's in the PMBOK, that knowledge area has to be covered. Now we don't test on the PMBOK anymore. We've moved away from that, and we've given 10 to 12 references that you can use to study for the exam. But the fact of the matter is, I think that senior leadership in organizations see that the potential for Agile to shorten the delivery time, to deliver a better product faster. Well, to them, that's money coming in faster, that's revenue faster, which means profit faster. And so it looks really good to them. And so they start to adopt it, and then they get into the utilization of it, and they see these problems popping up on projects that really don't lend themselves to Agile. And some organizations regroup, and now they make Agile a separate possibility, but someone has to make a call when the project is being accepted and done. How we can use Agile on this project, we can use predictive on this project. So the waterfall approach is not going to go away. It's always going to be there, but it's going to be used on fewer projects, because if you look at the financial makeup of organizations, 70 to 80% of the discretionary spending in an organization is on software. So you're going to see a lot of Agile projects. There's no doubt about that. If it's effective in Agile and software projects, of course you're going to use it. So I think you are going to see a continued growth in the utilization of Agile. I think CEOs and decision makers are going to see that. But one of the things they don't see, and one of the things I liked about Agile, is actually incorporated some things that I wish we could have done in predictive. Things like senior level decision makers are involved in the decision making process. The Agile says they attend meetings well, that's not going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, they're participating, and all the players are participating. So when we have these dailies, probably a little bit out of line, but when we have these short term meetings of everybody that's involved, we ask three basic questions: what did we get done? what do we have to do tomorrow, and what's going to be in the way of us being able to do that? Those are three very important questions that I've been asking in a predictive world since the beginning of time. So it's not new. I mean, the Agile people like to give it a new name and call it new. And so those things are important. But now the process sort of forces that, because it says that's what you do. When you do it in a predictive, it's because you're a good project manager. But now they've process-wise added that in, added those kinds of things in. The retrospective, what that's called. The retrospective is the is the analysis of what happened. It's the as-built, if you will, from an engineering perspective. Well, okay, let's not call it as-built. Let's call it retrospective. Oh God, yeah, I love that. Let's do retrospectives. Well, it's the same thing. So you got to understand, there's not as much new here as we like to think there is. There's new names, there's new possibilities, I suppose, but there's a lot of the same basic stuff. Project management is project management is project management. And so whether you're using Agile, whether you're using waterfall, whether you're using earned value, it doesn't matter. It's all project management.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I usually get this question asked, like this Agile manifesto, which was created like in 2001. But for example, there are a lot of stuff that been invented and used before that, actually, and this usually creates confusion. And the way I usually explain that is like, okay, when we like review the values of the manifesto, do you see something that is unusual or an invention? Be transparent, ask questions. Customer is important, or working product is important. Now you can't name one of the values that is not important during using a predictive model, actually. So I fully agree with you about that. So I think it's just a matter of evolution of using in a different circumstances and a different project, but still it's a project man. That's actually one of the pillars why I'm thinking that this is project Agile is also a project management. One more question, actually, what about like your practical project management? Do you still involved in the project management, or you are like currently more in a consultant way, or like doing this?
I'm right now. I'm older than dirt, so I'm not doing as much consulting. I'm doing advising. That's what they like to call it. In fact, I'm under contract with the PMI as a strategic advisor, whatever the heck that is, and so I get a chance to opine on things that other people are doing, on things that other organizations are doing. I get to share my perspective and my thought on what it is you're trying to do and how maybe you could do it better. So it's consulting in a way, but it's really I'm not out selling consulting services. But what's happened with the PMI connection is that I'm globally now a reference point for project management. So if there's a question in Cameroon or a question in Venezuela, they send it to me, and I try to get them the answer. If I can't get the answer, I'll find where it is and make sure they get answers to their questions. I think we're in a stage of refinement right now where the economy is forcing us to become better project managers. I mean, the day of unlimited budgets and all of that sort of freedom, they are no more. And so, with project management, if I use it correctly, I can decide which projects are going to have the highest return on my investment and invest my money in those and leave some others to the side that might have been done in prior years. So I'm spending a lot of time traveling around. I've been sort of all over the world in terms of sitting down and just chatting. I mean, just kind of asking questions about where are you, what problems are you having, and what's working for you and what isn't. So I've become a reference point for that. Thank God my health is good. I mean, I'm 77, and the travel doesn't get me down. I'm not teaching classes anymore. I used to teach every day, 8 hours a day. I don't know if I could deal with that anymore, but I still give presentations. Just did Riyadh and Dubai about 6 presentations over there. So I'm keeping busy, and as long as project management's in vogue, which I don't see it ever going away, to tell you the truth, I'm sure there'll be a place for me to contribute.
Yeah, I would I mean, wanting you to Armenia, visit Armenia one day. Actually, it will be it is a fantastic country, and there is a plenty of followers of the PMP in here. So one of the trips, I hope so someday it will be like in Armenia. One like, let's call it the king question I usually ask at the end of the discussion is that, what you would advise for the newcomers? I mean, people who maybe not young, but still they're young in the profession, like the project manager. They start to think about this. They will face a lot of obstacles. They have a lot of fears, doubts, and that's pretty normal. But what will be your general advice for them, maybe to overcome that, maybe to motivate them? What you would say to them?
Yeah, no, I feel that with the people I talk to, people that aren't yet project managers. Here's my view of that. Project management ain't brain surgery. Okay? I mean, it's not like they're trying to train to be a brain surgeon. And so I think it's basic common sense. In fact, I wrote a book about that. It's common sense. If you use common sense and then look at the facilitation of what the process looks like, you begin to see, hey, this isn't that difficult. It's just common sense, asking the right questions of the right people at the right time. And it doesn't, the transition from, especially a technical background, engineering or something of that nature, that's the thought process we learn in school anyway. So applying it in the world of project management, not that big a deal. Now, once you do that, I think a person can convert to and I've converted a lot of people, can convert to project management in 3 years or less, depending on how serious they want to get about it. Now, once you get to project management, the new thing, and I'm selling this big time. If I'm going to be new in project management, starting over, I'm going to focus my attention on change management. That's the new career on the forefront. It was risk. Risk has been real big for quite a while, and it still is big. But what's going to get bigger and bigger is change management, which includes risk management. And I think there's going to be career path there. And I tell my students, if I had to choose now, if I were young like they are, and I had to choose now, I would specialize in change management. But I think I just don't think it's that difficult. I think 2 or 3 years of experience of actually running projects. Most of us run projects around the house all the time. We're doing it for home improvement. We're doing it for lots of things, and so we've got experience. We just don't call it the same things that we do in the formal way of doing project management.
I see. Okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for your time. And this was a real motivation actually for me, and I do believe it will find a lot of impact for the people I share with this. And I hope that we're gonna meet someday, maybe in Armenia. So I'll do best for that. And thank you very much once again. So for everyone, like our guest today was Lee Lambert, founder of the PMP and one of the biggest personas in the project management that I've known. Thank you for finding time. This was the channel AgileSeeker, and we're talking with interesting people about interesting stuff. Thank you, Lee.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.